understand who it is and what will be happening and what you want them to see and what image that you want to project. So let's turn to page 7. There are 2 images on the page. What do you see in the top image? You see an old woman or a young woman? You see both? Do you all see both?
I first see an old woman.
You first saw an old woman, and then did you see the young woman? You see both?
Yeah.
Most often that's a perception. What do you see in the next one?
Looks like a young woman.
Okay.
Staring ahead.
Anybody see anything else? You see a face?
I see a person with instrument.
You see the man with the instrument.
Yeah.
These are called perceptions. These are things that when people look at them, they can see something different. And when you have a whole room full of people, you can have 10 people seeing an old woman, and you can have another 10 people seeing the young woman. And eventually, if you really look at it long enough, you will begin to see both of them. And of course, in the bottom picture, it is the face of a woman, and it's also a man playing a saxophone. But the important part of this is perception is reality. And so how someone views what you do, or how you look, or with whom you associate, all those kinds of things is what's real to them. So they will perceive and interpret your actions or what you say, how you write something on a piece of paper, based on their past experiences, their current circumstances, and their value systems. Have you ever sat down with a friend and said something to them and then said to yourself, I probably shouldn't have said that? And they look at you with a look on their face of, why did you say that? It's not what you intended. It's how they perceived it and how they responded to it. Emails. Email is a perfect example of how you can get an incorrect interpretation of what you say and how you are communicating. You're writing something, it has no emotion, or maybe you're in a hurry, or maybe you're angry about something, and so in the tone of what you're writing comes through a tone of how you're feeling. But that's not necessarily what the person on the other end of that email should be getting, right? So when they read it, then they're going to interpret it because their perception is that you're doing this to them. So let's turn one more page. What we see is another perception. What do you see at the top of this page? An Indian head or an Eskimo?
I see the Indian head.
You see the Indian head or the Eskimo?
Indian head.
Now look at it again and you will see the Eskimo looking into the igloo. Where it looks like the eye of the Indian head, that is the back, the neck of the Eskimo. Again, it's a perception. It's how you're looking at it and how you're interpreting what it is that's being done. So let's think about right now. You wrote down some goals and the impression that you want to make to achieve those goals. If you thought about your own friends or relatives or teachers or the people that you are around all day long, how would they perceive you? What would they say about you? If they were to describe you, how would they describe you? Because that is their perception of you. That's how they interpret who you are and your actions and the things that you say. What would they say about you? It's kind of an interesting thought, isn't it? Well, go ahead.
Serious.
Serious. They would say you're serious. Okay, so is that what you want them to say?
No, not really.
What would you want them to see? But that's part of that whole first impression thing going on, because you want to create an impression. You want them to think of you a certain way. Now they're going to interpret that differently, and you're smiling. You're probably not the least bit serious. What would they say about you?
Energetic.
Energetic, okay. Is that what you want them to say?
Yes.
Okay, that's good.
I think they would say I'm thoughtful.
Thoughtful,
Thoughtful.
okay. Are you beginning to see the pattern of how you think about what is this impression that you make? You know, one of the things in business, once you get out of college and go on into the business world, one of the things that happens a lot are people going to networking functions. There are breakfast, lunches, social events. Most often people will stand up and say, "Hello, my name is," and they'll give you their name. And I'm always saying, unless your name is Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, Oprah Winfrey, or John Corzine, or some name that's really well known, your name is not what's important. The first impression you want to make is about something that you want to attract them. How do you want to attract them? So when you think about that in this context, let's say that I'm an attorney in a big law firm, and I get up in front of a group of people and I say to them, "I am with such and such law firm, and we have been around 50 years, and we have 400 attorneys, and I'm here to help you protect your rights." You might be sitting in that audience saying, "Gee, that's great, but if you're with a firm that's that big, your rates are probably very high." Correct? So their interpretation of what you're saying isn't necessarily that we have a great firm and we have a lot of resources and you will have, you know, a wonderful opportunity if you come here. What happens is people interpret that message as, I'm either not big enough for you, you're going to be way too expensive for me, or I'm going to get lost in this firm. Okay? Does that make sense? Do you understand? If you were to stand up there and say, I'm an attorney who cares about protecting your rights, and I come from an environment in which we have a lot of resources, and I'd like an opportunity to talk to you about that, now all of a sudden you've made an entirely different impression. And the interpretation that somebody has isn't that you come from a large firm that could be expensive or that they could get lost in the shuffle. They now are looking at you as an individual saying, this is somebody I want to sit down and talk to. Because basically the impression that you're making as a first impression is to help you get to the next level, is to create the foundation for you that says, this is who I am, this is who I want you to know that I am, and I'm going to limit your opportunity to interpret what I'm doing because this is what I want you to know. Okay? The last part of this that's very important is the perspective. You know, once again, if you turn to page 10, a perspective is a point of view. How do you change someone's mind? How do you actually change their point of view? Do you think you can do that? Really? Do you think that when the politician stands up there, or the candidate for presidency, or for anything for that matter, says to you, I am going to do this, you will be well assured, I can guarantee you, this is what I'm going to do, it's not what you think, it's going to be different. Are you really going to change? Are they really changing your mind? So rather than trying to change someone else's mind, the idea is that you change your point of view. You take a step back and say, if this is what I'm after, if my goal is to be a resident assistant and I will go in there with a certain attitude and a certain idea of how I'm going to make a great impression, I'm going to make sure that whomever is on the other side of my communication is going to interpret things the way I want them to. Let me think about what I'm doing. So let me turn around and let me be the receiver of my own information and let me really think about this. So changing your own perspective in the whole course of making a great first impression can help you. Once you've determined certain things that you want to do, you take a step back and you say, okay, let me think about that. Or maybe sometimes you sit down with a friend or someone who's knowledgeable and say, this is my goal, this is what I'm trying to do, this is how I'm going to approach it, tell me what you think. So let's think about just a little bit, what do you, on the goals that you have, you talked about what your friends think about you. On page 11, there is a worksheet that says, let's define